Hey everyone, Austin here again, doing part 2 of this sort of casual off-the-cuff series where I talk about how I make my videos and how I run my channel and things like that. So in the first episode, I basically showed you guys the process of creating thumbnails, sort of like the effort that goes into creating those and sort of like the mindset behind that. Nothing too crazy there, probably nothing too entertaining, but I know for those of you guys that like behind the scenes stuff, maybe that was entertaining for you folks. So, again, kind of like the previous video, this isn't, terribly involved. I'm basically going to be focusing on just my Let's Play videos here. I'm going to talk about how I record my gameplay footage and how I record my audio and how I edit my audio, and all that stuff should only take a couple minutes. It's very basic stuff here, nothing complex. And then I'll show you my video editing software that I use specifically for Let's Plays. I actually use two different video suites, one for Let's Plays because it renders so much faster, and the other for more complex videos that require a lot of quick editing and things like that, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. So to start off here, I basically use Open Broadcaster software, or Open Broadcaster OBS, basically, to record my gameplay footage. I have what's called a Elgato Game Capture HD60 Pro. It's an internalized PCI Express capture card geared towards, casual consumer gaming recordings and whatnot. Now, Elgato does provide its own software. However, I found it is extremely finicky and extremely inconsistent when it comes to local recording. So I don't bother with it anymore. I strictly use OBS. OBS will basically take the capture card, you can bring it in as a video device, and you could do local recording through OBS. So in OBS, I basically have a basic template, a local recording template, where I just use this template for local recording. So I don't bother with the volume and stuff like that here, except for the game audio. I don't have my mic linked into here. I record my audio separately, and you can basically just choose a folder where you want to record locally to, and what quality you want to do it at, and then you just hit start record. I record as MP4 files. Now there are other containers that you can record to, but I just like MP4. It's easy, and it just works with any software that I can throw it at. So next up is the audio end, and to record my audio, I use Ableton Live. This is version 9, which is several years old by this point. This is not cheap software. This is like $400 to $500 software. The reason I have this and the reason I use it is that I bought it when I was still doing, like my DJ stuff and trying to tinker around with electronic music and whatnot. And since I have the software, I've been using it as my primary voice recording software for years now, ever since I bought it, basically. And Ableton is a great program if you're trying to create music, but it's also good if you just want to do basic voice stuff. It's very quick and easy. It's very reliable, and it's got its own built-in compressors and EQs and things like that. So basically what we have here is Ableton Live 9. We're actually recording, and it's actually recording what we're talking about right now, or what we're saying right now. And it's not too complex. If I wanted to, I can add an EQ and a compressor, which I have my own templates. I have my own presets over here on the left. And basically what I do is after a track is done, I just drag these onto the existing track. It adds the compressor, it adds the EQs. I can't do it while it's recording, but it's pretty basic. I basically, to keep the workflow relatively smooth, I just have templates for a lot of stuff I do, and this is going to roll into my video editing portion as well, where I've got templates for that as well. So my Let's Plays aren't really that complex. It's more about the talking, it's more about the gameplay and stuff like that. I don't really have any complex editing. That goes for both the audio and the video, and so having templates for the style of Let's Plays that I do really speeds up the whole process quite a bit. So after that, basically what I'll do is I'll stop the audio. I will save it, because you don't want to lose what what you've recorded. There's nothing like doing a whole Let's Play, either losing the footage or losing the audio. That means you have to do the whole thing over again, and that has actually happened to me quite a few times in the past. It's extremely frustrating. It's extremely frustrating when you get a good recording and it's lost. So I try to take all the precautions I can so I don't lose progress. I hate having to redo videos. There's, you know, because a lot of times I've already had to redo videos because of poor gameplay or poor commentary where I just start to trail off and I start to not make sense or something like that. And then I give up halfway through the video and I have to restart. So I take all the precautions I can, I save my work, and then yeah. So after we save our work here, we basically export it as a wave. And then after that, I bring the wave into Audacity. So we're going to fire up Audacity here as well. And Audacity is a free application. The reason I use this, and let me go ahead and open the file. So let's just say this is Castlevania Bloodlines from a couple of weeks ago. We just loaded up, and what I'm doing here in Audacity is doing a noise removal. So when you record with condenser microphones in particular, they pick up all the room noise. They'll pick up your air conditioning. They'll pick up any hums in the room. And so what I do here is I apply a filter that basically will remove that noise across the whole track. Now, programs like Ableton Live and stuff like that, they have plugins that can do noise gates and things like that. But the thing about active noise gates is that they're sort of adaptive. And what I like here about Audacity's noise removal tool is that it'll basically calculate the amount of noise, and then it'll just remove that entire frequency across like the whole track. And so it basically gives it a much more consistent noise removal to where you can't even really tell that noise is even there. So let's go and mess around here. So what I like to do is go to a part of the track where there's no noise. So let's hear. You can hear clicks and things like that. You can hear me rustling around on the keyboard. So basically, I want the cleanest part of the track. And there's actually a small little gap right here where there's basically no noise. All you hear is just the air conditioning in the background. It's going to be extremely faint for you guys. You're probably not going to be able to hear it. But what I'll do is I'll go to Effect and then Noise Reduction. And then I'll do what's called Get the Noise Profile. It basically calculates the amount of noise in this area. And then what I do is I go back to the noise reduction and then actually apply the noise reduction. So that's where step 2 comes into play. You can you know, tweak the settings and things like that, like the the dB and the sensitivity and the smoothing and whatnot. But I usually just leave it at the default. Click OK. And then it goes through the whole noise reduction process. So this can take a little while depending on your system. For me, it doesn't take that long. I mean, I'm on a modern Ryzen 1700X based system, so it does go relatively quickly. Keep in mind, this doesn't look that fast, but this is like an hour to an hour and a half long recording that I'm reducing the noise on. Shorter videos, 20 to 30 minute videos, just go like that. They're really, really fast. But the longer the video, the longer the waveform, the longer it takes to do this. What I'll also do after this is actually chop out the edges of the audio. So a lot of times I hit record, and it takes a little while for me to actually start doing my thing. So I might hit the record button just to make sure I'm recording, and I'm still going through, finding my game, trying to load it up, trying to figure out where I'm going to start talking and things like that. And yeah, so the noise reduction is almost done here. And so now if we play the exact same area, you can't hear the air conditioning in the background, like the faint hum. You can still hear like my clicks and clacks and things like that, but all that stuff's going to be chopped out anyway. So now the next step is basically, now that the noise has been removed, we'll go through and we'll chop out the basically the empty space in the beginning. And so we'll just take the cursor up to there. We will highlight everything and just delete it like so. Okay, so I've got that just right. So we have to delete the rest of this as well. And then we play it. And that's fine. So that's great. Now I can do this in my video editing software. What I find it's actually easier to just do it in the audio software and then not have to worry about doing it in my video editing software. The thing about my video editing software for Let's Plays is it's very, very sluggish. It's my big complaint with it. And then we'll just chop this out as well. And then that's it. So at this point, what we do is we just export the audio. Again, I recorded it as a wave. I just export it as a wave as well. There's no reason to export it as an MP3 or anything like that. If you export it as an MP3, it actually might be harder for your video editing software to play with that audio because it basically has to decompress it. So when you export it as just a WAV file, it's just raw uncompressed audio. So, and we just go ahead and save it. Fortunately, the export on the WAV files is a lot faster than the noise reduction. So again, this isn't like an hour long playthrough. And look at how fast it's rendering. So if I did this 10 years ago, this would have taken like 10 minutes to do. Well, that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but it would have taken considerably longer than it did just now. So at that point, I just go ahead and exit Audacity. There's nothing else for me to do. And the next step is the video editing. And so the video editing is actually quite basic. A lot of times what I will do is just use a template. So we actually have CyberLink Power Director 15 here. This is my video editing suite I use strictly for my Let's Plays. I use Sony Vegas Pro 13 right now for any other video that takes a lot of editing. I used to use Sony Vegas primarily. However, Vegas over the years just has become extremely unstable. It doesn't like GPU acceleration. It'll crash if I try to use my graphics card to render the video. GPU acceleration makes rendering videos much faster, and if I can't use that, it takes absolute ages to render the video. A great example is my thumbnail video, which was like an hour and 20 minutes long after editing. It was actually much longer before I chopped it up to pieces. That took about 8 hours to render in Sony Vegas, whereas in CyberLink Power Director, an hour and 20 minute long video will probably take about an hour and 20 minutes to render. So that is the time difference that I save. I save about 7 hours on an hour to an hour and a half long video by using this software. So this software is very sluggish, but it's also stable. It's very reliable. I've only had one crash since I've had it. And that was because I think I was just trying to force too many things at once and the program just went kaput. And that was the only time I've ever had a crash. I've never had a render fail. So that is also something to keep in mind when you're making videos in general, not just even Let's Plays, but reliability and stability becomes very important, because you can't be trying to render a video 20 times because it keeps crashing when you need to have that video posted that day or the next day or something like that. But you don't even want to have to deal with that stuff anyway, because you know your time could be better spent actually making more content or practicing for more content, instead of trying to spend all that time just rendering a single video, because it just keeps failing. And that's what Sony Vegas was doing to me. And that's why I seeked out different editing suites. Another one was Adobe Premiere Elements, which I just found to be, it just was not good for what I was trying to do. It wasn't very user-friendly. And I should say it wasn't that it wasn't user-friendly. It just was not streamlined. It was really made for people that have never edited video before, and you can do complex stuff with it, but the way to do complex stuff with it just does not make sense to me. So CyberLink Power Director is, which we got right here, is a little bit more of a median from from what I'm used to with Sony Vegas Pro, which is basically full-fledged professional software, and the streamlined nature of that with sort of like the usability of something like Premiere Elements. So this actually has more in common with Sony Vegas Pro than it does Premiere Elements, but it does have some quirks of its own. I'm not going to go into that. This is really about just showing you what I do to basically record my videos. So we actually have my Streets of Rage 2 Let's Play right here. And if you look down on the bottom here, you'll see various different tracks. So this top track right here is actually my background, and we can actually mute that. You'll notice that it disappears just like so. Then this track right here, obviously it's the gameplay with its audio, and we can just mute that and you'll see it disappear. And then below that we have my gameplay and talk thumbnail, which I have on pretty much all my videos. And then more so over here, we have to actually hold down Control and scroll the mouse up. This is the Patreon and Super Chat section you always see at very specific times of each video. And I basically have those just over there like that. I can move them around if I really wanted to, but I'm not going to. And then this bottom one right here is the voice track. It is the voiceover for the whole thing. So yeah, that's basically it. What I do with my Let's Plays is, and again, like I said, this isn't very complex. This is very template driven. You know, I've created my own templates over the years, and I just use them. I just drag the footage in, I drag the voices in, and then do some minor tweaks that I'm going to show you. But what I do is I take a Let's Play I've already done. So this is Streets of Rage 2. And I actually have to put together an export for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Hyperstone Heist. And so that's a video that's going to be posted in a few weeks once the other content has been posted. I post all my videos in order. So I record them in order. I post them in that same order. So I don't post out of order unless just nothing significant has happened. Like if I haven't gotten any new Patreon backers, or if I haven't gotten any new super chats, then maybe I'll post videos out of order, because you know, it doesn't really matter. I'm not introducing like new folks to, you know, the support bars up here. And I also have to be careful about posting videos out of order, because in a lot of videos I'll actually reference past videos or future videos, and if I post them out of order, those references might not actually make any sense. So what I do up here in the top left, this is basically where you can, this is the content in your project, and I just delete the old content for, say, Streets of Rage, and then I bring in the new content for, say, Turtles. And so I have a voiceovers folder, and it should be Hyperstone Heist. There we go. And then I'll go to my, my OBS recordings folder, and it should be this one right here. And let me just make sure. Yeah, 1.56 gigabytes. That sounds about right. The video is about 40 minutes long, so that sounds about right. And then, so that's it. We've got, you know, our footage, and I use a flash card, so you can see all those goodies on there. So let's drag our voiceover down to the voice track. Like I said, this is very cookie cutter. It's streamlined. It's templatized. And there you go. You've got the voice track. And now we're going to drag the gameplay footage down below. And the next part we have to do, basically, and let's mute this Patreon part, just so it gets out of the way for when I'm editing. So now I have to line up the audio to the gameplay. So you might be saying to yourself, well, where do you actually start recording the audio? Do you record it here when you're selecting your game? Well, it depends on the video, and I have to keep that in my mind. And it's really important for me to start editing these videos almost right after I record them, just so I remember where I started talking in the video. So I was actually having some issues with this game with my capture card. Like it would go out and give me a no signal message a couple times, and that was kind of tripping me up. And so what I decided to do was just go to the title screen and then just start the voice there. So let's go ahead, and I usually do it right as it starts fading in. I think I was doing it right as it was starting to fade in on this game. And then I just chop the rest out there, and then that's pretty much it. So now the audio is actually lined up with the video. So let's see, let's go ahead and hit play. And let's go a little bit further. And a lot of times you can tell if, like, I don't actually need to do this. I already know the audio is lined up, but sort of to show it as an example, you can sort of listen to the audio and sort of figure out as you're watching, okay, is that lined up? Is it not lined up? So let's see. Yeah, so I say, let's go ahead and jump into the game. I hit exit, and I was just talking about the color change there. So I know it's lined up, and now you guys know it's lined up as well. And that's basically how I line up the audio. That's it. So when I go and I record footage, I basically say to myself, okay, I'm going to start talking here. And all I do is I just bring the audio to about that point I started talking in the video, and it just kind of, it lines up well enough. It's not perfect, you know, it's probably a few frames off here and there, either forward or backwards, but it doesn't really matter that much, to be honest with you. a lot of the stuff I talk about in my Let's Plays anyway are things that have happened just a few moments prior. So, you know, when I talk about them, they're not going to be lined up with the exact moment. Like when I attack an enemy and I want to talk about what I did there, it might take me a few moments before I actually do that because I'm trying to deal with the situation in game and then get sort of like a moment to breathe and then talk about it. So... but yeah, that's how I line up my videos. The next part is lining up the Patreon stuff. So a lot of times what I do is, I'm trying to remember if I did the Patreon part before or after this. So now I have to figure that part out. So let's see. So what I also do to edit a little bit faster and to preview a little bit faster is I just put the preview render quality at the lowest possible, and it lets me sort of skim through the video faster. Okay, I just talked about patronage. Okay. Okay, so I actually have these little markers up top here as well. And so once I hear myself starting to talk about the Patreon backers, I move one of these markers to that area. And then what I do is I have this little section right here, which is basically my Patreon backers and Super Chat bars. And I basically just highlight them. And I just move them to the part where I want them. So I've already actually edited these. I actually had to go through and edit the Super Chat bar because we got a bunch of Super Chats the other night. So I like to keep this stuff relatively up to date. Sometimes it's out of date because I'll record my videos like 3 or 4 ahead of schedule. But because I just recorded these videos today, I actually recorded both the Streets of Rage 2 and Hyperstone Heist videos today, I was able to go through and actually manually update the Super Chat bar. So let's go ahead and make that appear again. So that Super Chat bar is up to date as of the date of recording this video. And so let's go. And what I usually like to do is have that lined up a little bit better. So like the second I start saying Patreon backers, I like to have that, you know, that come out right away. So let's go ahead and make sure it's lined up. Yeah, good enough. So you'll notice that it's really sluggish actually. Let's go ahead and just mute the voice tracks. You'll notice that it's really sluggish to hit play and to have things actually come out. Like here's the Patreon backer transition. And it's a little sluggish coming out. Might be actually less sluggish since I muted the voice track, but that's because I'm viewing this preview at a higher quality. So I usually do it at normal quality or lower. So that's pretty much that. The next part I do is I make sure that the end of the video is lined up properly, and all my things like my gameplay and talk logo basically are lined up with the end of the voice track. And for this one's actually special in a way because I actually cut the video a little bit earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and just let like the, I'm going to let all this stuff just play out. I'm going to let the game over play out. And then I'm going to fade it out. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to make sure that's, oops. This software is so sluggish. It's so frustrating. And it actually did something I didn't want it to do. So I wanted to fade the black. That's the Sega logo. And we bring it like that. And now we drag it. Like that. That actually made no sense. I don't know why it was doing that. This software is kind of crappy, to be honest with you. I don't like it that much, but the reason I use it is that it is just extremely, it's extremely reliable and it renders very, very quickly. So now my backdrop here, I drag that all the way over to here. It automatically snaps to where my voice track is. You can sort of see like a faint blue line as I drag stuff in and out. So you'll notice that when you drag things in, your little line will turn to blue as it snaps to things. I'll try to zoom in on that so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. And because I know where my voice track ends, I know that this blue line right here is my voice track. So I like to have everything line up with my voice track, but this is just a slight exception with Hyperstone Heist because I cut the video off early. I was just like, I don't have anything else to talk about, and I'm really not having fun recording this game anymore. So let me get out of here. Is that sort of, you know, situation. All right. So next we have to basically shrink the gameplay down. We have to add a border. I like to have a border around my gameplay, just to let it stand out from the background and just to make sure things don't blend into one another. So we're going to have to do that, but we're going to also have to shrink the gameplay down a little bit, and we're going to have to crop the gameplay. So there's two things I have to do here. First, I go to Tools and then Power Tools. And what this has is a couple different you know, features. The crop and zoom feature is the important one here. And so we go to crop and zoom. So what I have to do here is first I have to go down to this little box in the bottom right, go delete the snap to reference lines. It always snaps by default. And then I go to freeform, which lets me basically transform the crop freely. Otherwise, it's locked into a very specific aspect ratio or something like that. See how the square is just going, it's just, you know, it's a forced square. You can't really do anything about it. So I go to freeform so I can basically do it however I want. And for a lot of this gameplay footage, you know, the aspect ratios are different from console to console and resolution to resolution. So the freeform lets me do this however I want. All right, so what I like to do is skip forward into the gameplay so it's nice and bright so I can actually see, you know, what the gameplay field looks like. So what I do is I just crop the outsides. I try to get as close to the, you know, the black edges as I can. I don't want to chop off too much gameplay if I can avoid it. And then I just bring this down as well. And that's pretty much it. So that's a good crop. And let's just click OK. That's, you know, that finishes that. And let's go ahead and skip forward. So now you'll notice the gameplay's cropped. There are no black borders on the sides. Because when I capture my footage, you know, I go through the open source scan converter or the XRGB Mini FrameMeister, and it basically will output those in like HD resolutions to my capture card. And so it'll record with black borders on the sides of the screen, which I want to chop out naturally. So we're going to go ahead and close out this power tool settings. I can't really do anything else with the footage until I close out this window in the top left. But now that I've done that, you'll notice there's a selection box around the gameplay, and I can go ahead and shrink it in a little bit. So the reason I shrink in my gameplay like this rather than stretch it out fully is a lot of people watch on televisions, believe it or not. And when they watch on televisions, a big portion of the gameplay or the video has a tendency of being chopped out. The video just goes over the or past the TV's natural border area, and stuff will get left out of the video. So to avoid having that happen on a grand scale, I bring my footage in a little bit. I should actually technically bring the footage in a lot smaller like I used to. Kind of like this. I mean, that's overkill, but I used to have my gameplay more like, probably more, not like that, probably more like this. Part of the reason I did it like this back in the day was, for one, I was recording in composite, and when I blew the gameplay up, it just looked terrible. But now that I'm recording in much higher quality, I've got nice upscalers, I'm doing RGB, the footage is razor sharp and crystal clear, even when it's blown up. But I still like to leave, that gap on the tops and bottom of the screen. That way it doesn't get cut off when people are watching on televisions. And I still think it looks fine when you're watching on a mobile device or a computer monitor or something like that. So what I do here is I select it, and it kind of snaps automatically as well, kind of like when I was doing my crop, but I get it to around where I need it, and then I just use the arrow keys to manually shift it. And I just eye it. I don't sit here and really worry about what pixel line it's on or whatever. But yeah, that's that. And then the next step, and let's go ahead and go to preview quality, HD preview resolution again, just so you can see, a better representation of it. The next thing I do, like I said, is I add the border. So to add a border, all you have to do is just double click it, go to border, and then it adds a big border like that. So I always do the same orange color. If I want to get fancy, I can do like a gradient, but that border is too big. So I just do a one size border, which is basically the smallest border. And if I really wanted to, I could lower the opacity of that border. But I find doing that in this, it just looks a little weird. It looks different in Vegas. I used to always lower the opacity of the border in Vegas, which is why you'll notice on older videos, my border isn't as bright as it is now. And it's bright now because I'm in Power Director, and I just leave it as is. So that's that. So now we've got a, you know, a border around the gameplay, and then I don't bother shifting the gameplay, like scrunching it in a little bit. So this is how it actually captured. This is what it looks like going through the OSSC at its 5x scaling setting. And what I used to do, my capture setup used to actually record every game, even 4:3 games in widescreen. It would be 16:9. It would be stretched out. So I would actually shift the games in manually to get them to look 4:3. And that's why on some old videos, you might see games that the aspect ratios were not quite perfect. And that was because when they were recorded, it was like 16:9, and I had to force squish the games down to get them to look 4:3 again. That was with my old, going through the old Elgato software with the old composite and component setup. So, but since this is how it comes out through the OSSC on my capture card, I just leave it. It looks crystal clear. And it's actually similar to what you get on a consumer television with that 4:3 aspect ratio. So the next thing to do is you'll notice that there's no fade in or out when I start a video. So let's go here. So nothing fades in. So what I do now is I go and I double click each of the three main assets. So the border and the gameplay and whatnot, and I basically add fades to them. So to do that, you just double click the clip, you click this fades option right here, and you enable fade in, enable fade out, click OK, and now when we hit play at the start, the footage is going to fade in, which is a little bit easier on the eyes. And then if we exit, it's going to also fade out. So kind of like this. And there we go. So fading in and fading out in Power Director is really cumbersome compared to Vegas. So in Sony Vegas, you would just drag the edges of the clip in and you're done. Fade in, fade out. It's so quick and easy, and it's snappy. It's not sluggish. So that's another reason why I don't like Power Director that much. But again, the render times are just so fast in this software, I pretty much have to use it. So next we have to actually fade out the backdrop and my gameplay and talk logos, so you do it the same way. A quirk with Power Director is that you have to remove the keyframes that you already had, which is basically the fade-ins and fade-outs, and then you basically add new keyframes by disabling the old fade-ins, fade-outs, and then creating new ones just by re-clicking them like that. And so now this footage, say the G logo here, is going to actually fade out. Kind of like that. It was really sluggish though, because we're previewing the video at the HD resolution now, so it's going to be choppy. So we have to do the same thing for the background for consistency purposes. We have to remove all keyframes and then add new ones just like that. And now this should fade out as well. Let's go to preview quality, normal preview quality, so to get a smoother fade. And there we go. So I'm basically just fading the background and the gameplay and talk logo. I'm trying to leave this last part in here just so the credits roll out and you guys see the game over screen. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll just chop. Usually what I do is I chop the gameplay and the background and the gameplay and talk logo. Everything just cuts out at the same moment. But for this very specific Let's Play, and I haven't done this in a while, is I'm just letting it go out a little bit longer so people can actually see the full credits. Some people might get a little antsy if I chop the credits early, so I try to leave those in if possible. So I try to generally just keep talking till the end of the credits, but this TMNT Let's Play I just had no desire to. So but yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the whole process for editing my Let's Plays. It's not really that complex. So what we're going to do is we're going to save over the Streets of Rage project. we're going to save to a new project, sorry. So instead of, I don't want to save over the Streets of Rage project, is I guess what I meant. So let's play TMNT Hyperstone Heist. And it's going to basically save its own project. Normally what I do is I do that part first. That way I can save my progress as I'm working on these videos. But like I said, Power Director has been pretty reliable. I don't worry too much about losing progress in this video editing suite. And basically what we do now is we just go to File, Produce Movie. And like everything else, I have a template for, you know, my rendering template. So we basically render as MP4, 60 frames a second, 1920 by 1080. Audio bit rate's 192. I could go a lot higher if I really wanted to, but I don't think it's necessary for this kind of video. And I have it set to quality mode, and the bit rate's at about 30,000 kbps. I could crank it up if I want to. It's probably not really necessary though. So, and I make sure I use deblocking. Deblocking will make sure that the footage is crisp and not like, you know, not giving this like filtered artifacting kind of effect, which can happen with MP4s. And then the audio is basically the same thing. So, I have other templates as well. I have some 720p 30 stuff. I have some other test templates for random other things I was doing. You basically just name your file, and so I'll just do Hyperstone, and I basically have it set to export to a very specific folder on my D drive. And then we go ahead and just hit start, and there we go. So now it is quote unquote producing the movie. And if you look in the bottom portion of the screen, you can actually sort of see how fast it's going. So it's already produced just about 50 megabytes in the render so far. And it's got a bar in the top left-hand portion of the screen that'll basically tell us, you know, its progress. And so we are doing multiple things at the same time. We're recording in OBS, and we're recording in my audio editing software, so this might not move as quickly as it normally does. But my Ryzen system is actually pretty beefy. I'm really happy with it. I can stream and record stuff and produce or render videos at the exact same time. If I'm streaming, the render time on these videos will take longer, but I can do it in the background. It doesn't even really matter how long it takes, as long as, you know, I can still use my computer to do other things. And with Power Director here, I can, and with my Ryzen setup, I can. So it's a good little setup. I don't like this software that much, kind of like I mentioned already, but you know, it gets the job done. It's already 2% done. This is a 40-minute long video, so I don't even think we've elapsed 2 minutes yet. Yeah, we've elapsed 1 minute, and it's already you know, 1% or 2% done with the render. So it's actually moving at a decent rate. So, all right, guys. Well, that's pretty much it. That is my my recording setup for doing Let's Plays. That's the recording process, I should say. I will do other videos later on talking about the actual physical hardware I use. Like, I didn't touch on my microphone at all or anything like that, or the recording box I use for that. I didn't touch on a lot of other things as well. There will be a separate video in the future, which will probably be a little more structured, because it's going to require a lot of like B-roll footage in order to actually show you my recording setup. Like, I'll show you my 3-monitor setup. I'll show you, you know, my PVM and my upscalers and my recording boxes and stuff like that, and give you an idea of the chain of things. So yeah, I don't know if this was even as entertaining as the thumbnail video. If you guys missed the thumbnail video, you guys actually might like to check that out, because I actually go through and create the thumbnails live on the spot, which might be a little more interesting. So, but still, I hope that provides a little bit of insight into the process of recording and rendering my Let's Plays. And none of this goes into like the amount of practice I have to put in for the Let's Plays and how many takes they take and things like that. Like the Hyperstone Heist, I had to do like 5 times, and I even had the nap on it. I tried it like 4 times, failed 4 times, and then took a nap, woke up, and then the 5th time, you know, it was okay. It wasn't my favorite by a long shot, but it was good enough, I think, you know, to post. So yeah, so none of this went into that process. You know, the practicing in particular probably takes the absolute longest. And then, you know, the thumbnail video that I did, you know, the prior week, is that's another part of the process. You know, it took me an hour and a half to make those 3 thumbnails, and a lot of times they don't take that long, but they can take a while. So that's another part of the process that adds more time. So yeah, that pretty much wraps things up, guys. I hope you enjoyed this this concept. Also, just remember, I've got the thumbnail video that's already up as well, so feel free to check that out if you want more behind the scenes. If you missed that, I'll try to be back with some more of these sometime in the near future. And if there's anything in particular you guys want to see about my process or my setup, let me know, and I can try to make some other videos as well. If you toss me some ideas, maybe we can take this a little bit further than just the handful of videos that I've got in mind. So, but yeah, thanks for watching again, guys, and until the next one, take it easy.